What's up, it's Kate here from Marvelous Videos. Today we look at a sea-dwelling sinister cult from Sacrifice 2021 Explained. A New Yorker and his pregnant wife head to his birthplace in Norway to collect an unexpected fortune. When they discover themselves in a terrifying cult that worships a sea-dwelling deity, they find themselves in a living nightmare. Sacrifice is not your typical cult classic horror film. It's about a guy and his pregnant wife Emma returning to his birthplace in Norway. The pair is allegedly there to cope with the loss of the man's mother, and an unforeseen fortune arrives at their doorstep. They are, however, locked in a nightmare as an ancient galactic terror rises to seize its rights. Sacrifice is a slow-burning film in which the weird effect that the cult has on the couple gradually creeps into their everyday routines. It might feel a little sluggish than required at times. However, throughout these moments, the film seeks to fascinate by adding visual elements to the deity, or the creature, one might say, the peasants' revere. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. One can call Sacrifice a classic winter movie as well. Foggy nights and serene landscapes with the smoke of warmth lingering to the secrets of the Norwegian town. The people who live in this town are closed off, wearing a veil of welcoming gestures. And of course the mysterious waters standing still and staring right at your face. A massive mountain lurks in the background, and the ominous, unsettling soundtrack reminds us that it's not just any vast mountain, but a gigantic, terrifying one. A boat plows across the water, cutting through the eerie silence. Shallow glimpses of watery reflections hold unknown depths. These depths reflect in the dreams or nightmares that haunt the peasants over there. The town's motto, Dream Well, indeed makes quite a vague statement regarding adapting the mysterious and creepy traditions that have been followed for centuries. It definitely is a warning call for the people. The multiple occurrences of dreams in night and day eventually turn into haunting nightmares. The film's overall atmosphere was shaped in such a way that it managed to feel the cosmic dread. Its location is an actual Norwegian island that includes beautiful and frightening scenery that appears very much like anything Lovecraft might have created. This addition of landscape and its beautification slowly escalates the mood and tension, which captures the very essence of the film one might expect to watch. It's a film with a broad landscape, tight roads, and very odd residents of a rural town on an island in western Norway's northernmost regions. It's dreary, wet, and chilly. When the son who fled 15 years ago returns with his pregnant wife, you'll notice that the house is constructed on a plot that seems to have a dark and evil past. The character of Isaac gradually becomes quite distressing. At first, he and Emma appear to be a typical young married couple. Still, as the film progresses, Isaac is profoundly influenced by the cult and its divinity. Isaac gradually develops an aberrant behaviour culminating in a terrifying and dramatic conclusion. Yet no clarification is ever presented about why Isaac is so captivated by the creature. His demeanour shifts far more abruptly than that of the cultists, and the shortage of explanations is aggravating. When Isaac learns of his mother's death, he discovers that he has inherited a house on the Norwegian island where he was born. He recalls that his mother abandoned the island with him when he was pretty small. Thus, this mansion comes as a complete shock to him. He and his pregnant wife Emma plan to visit the island to sell the place as early as possible, so that they can return to the States before Emma gives birth. When they get on the island, they unearth mysteries from Isaac's history, including information regarding his dad's death and his mother's apparent participation in it. The journey turns into a nightmare when they discover the locals are a cult that idolizes and worships a sea-dwelling monster, or, in their words, a divinity. Over time, Isaac grows distant as he learns about his ancestors' rites and traditions, while Emma, approaching her due date, gets frightened and plagued by nightmares. As they settle in, the truth about Isaac's history emerges. The horror moments which are generated are founded more in Emma's fear about the scenario. Her dreams get increasingly spooky as the film progresses, as they help drive the film's relatively rapid tempo and adds to its strangeness. However, it becomes a little easier to pick up on when she's dreaming, since it generally involves water and tentacles while she's doing monotonous tasks, though they are lovely aesthetically. Almost every scene in this film, especially those involving blatant terror, is revealed to be a dream of our pregnant heroine. Imagination is the worst nightmare for a person in this town. The divinity or the creature usually makes its appearance in one's imagination. As one focuses on how the characters develop throughout the story, the sea-dwelling god becomes apparent, controlling one's mind, body, and soul. The control is established through nightmares, the daydreams, and the thoughts that engulf one's fear and guilt. The problem initiates with a non-threatening quarrel in a local pub. They ridicule Isaac since they assume he's a typical American. Still, they become terrified when Emma discloses Isaac's Norwegian surname. Even though Emma's suspicions are raised and she was weirded out, she dismissed them for the sake of it. The townspeople are competent enough, chiefly represented by Renate, the island's sheriff, a pretty amusing cult leader, and recounts some fascinating stories in the film. Renate arrives at their home unannounced. The local police chief shocks Isaac by informing him that he left the island 25 years ago. His history has altered and have future ramifications. As the local policeman, she tells him, somewhat abruptly, that his mother murdered his father as an assumption, and that his blood is on the floor beneath Isaac's feet. She then invites them to supper. She introduces the pair to her extremely quiet local daughter, Astrid. She describes how the people worship the slumbering one, a local folk god of local lore. Renate invites Isaac and Emma to an annual rite to learn about local customs. The ritual includes wearing hooded cloaks, pronouncing the an alarming number of times in loud and respectful tones, and being quasi-baptized in the icy waters. Isaac suddenly joins Renate's rogue sect for their ceremony in the sea. As Renate invites them to a neighborhood get-together she's throwing tomorrow, which is named something with many umlauts and Ks in it, Isaac is becoming more and more receptive to learning about midsummer traditions and customs. Isaac's conduct becomes problematic for Emma after reciting a promise to the slumbering one and getting baptized during the rite. Emma and Isaac meet with realtor Matthias to discuss the sale of their home. Having been persuaded by Gunnar and Ledver that he had discovered his true home, Isaac surprises Emma by stating that he refuses to let them leave. Emma informs Isaac that he's gone insane. When their dispute gets violent, Emma knocks Isaac unconscious and runs away. Before this, Emma is evidently irritated by Isaac's stubbornness, as is Isaac's apparent wish to stay in Norway and never return to the United States. They fight a lot and he goes out and drinks with the locals, acting strangely and standing mesmerized beneath the aurora borealis. Isaac watches Astrid rise from the freezing cold water like a ghost, a phantom who wasn't even clothed. Suggesting the circumstances as strange would be an understatement. The beautiful northern lights hold a dark belief among the locals. When it appears against the solid background of the night, rather than getting mesmerized, it scares them. And this fear adds to the mystery surrounding the town and its people. Astrid has a peculiar way of approaching Isaac, which initially makes him uncomfortable. However, as she rises from the cold water with the aurora borealis painting the background, it seems as if she's had a profound impact on him, luring him into her aura and hypnotizing him. Astrid's personality gives us a hint of the mystic powers surrounding the town's community. Throughout the narrative, Isaac's loving character progressively loses his caring nature as he frees himself from his everyday surroundings, which adds to his character. He and Emma approach the circumstance and community differently, as Isaac gradually accepts this environment while Emma just wants to return home. This interaction is best shown when Emma lightly mocks these people's undoubtedly weird rituals, yet it becomes very evident how uncomfortable she is. While Isaac may have giggled the day before, he now warns her that it's uncouth to insult someone else's culture. Emma is shocked and confused since this is nothing like the Isaac she's known for so long. The film's title plainly indicates that a sacrifice would take place, and it was evident from the start who would be engaged. Why is this so? Well, that's not so clear. Emma seeks to depart the island as quickly as possible after a brutal attempt to rescue her life from Isaac, who wasn't acting like himself. However, her naivety leads her to seek assistance from the wrong person. Emma awakens bound to an altar surrounded by robed cultists. Isaac draws his sword and prepares to stab his pregnant wife in the stomach. Renate unexpectedly has the cultist kidnap someone else instead. Even while there's a sense of relief, the cult prepares an unbreakable trap for the newcomers. With the legends of their deity in the sea, the society building on this island is captivating. The visual in this scene with the paintings and spooky stuff strewn around adds to the plot. Lovecraft references are liberally scattered, including murmurs of the slumbering one and Cthulhu sculptures. Much of the weirdness revolves around water, whether in baths, sinks, or the sea. Tentacles can be seen in visions and dreams. Pagans in white robes participate in full immersion baptism ceremonies and persuade Isaac to take the plunge. Sacrifice was similar to the Wicker Man in that they suspected these folks had a secret plan for bringing Isaac home. But what exactly is it, and why are they behaving so oddly? There were some imperceptible surprises along the way, but it really adds to the suspense and tension. The idea appears to be a rip-off of Midsummer, yet it does have individuality. In any case, the eccentric narrative taken from a short tale by Paul Kane and influenced by the literature of H.P. Lovecraft is reasonably good on the cultural tension between Americans and Europeans. It taps into the reservoir of unsettling associations associated with horror stories situated in Northern Europe, such as The Wicker Man or Midsummer. Sacrifice makes an essential contribution to the canon by introducing fears about a Nordic proclivity for insanity, brought on by long nights, northern lights, aquavit, and too much skinny dipping in frigid waters. Cult films are typically peculiar, unusual, wacky, unconventional, bizarre, or whimsical, with strange, crazy, distinctive, and gimmicky characters or stories, as well as flashy settings. They are frequently seen as problematic because they deviate from typical narratives and technical standards. They can be highly stylized, and they are often faulty or odd in some manner. Most cult films transcend several film genres, such as science fiction, horror, melodrama, and so on. In contrast, some film genres such as horror or sci-fi are more prone to cultish. Sacrifice attempts to distinguish itself from other cult horror films with its Lovecraftian overtones. The film's title clearly leads us to expect a ritual that serves as a sacrifice to renew power. This expected notion kind of guides us to a predictable outcome. The mysterious and creepy vibes, the absurd ways of interacting, and the bizarre beliefs and practices are depicted in a land of mist and watery landscapes. This landscape sets the stage for a classic cult movie. However, it molds itself in its unique form. Sacrifice inserts exceptionally brief bursts of blood and tentacles to keep the viewer's pulse from deadening, owing to the conversational dullness and depressing tone. In each of these cases, the panic is revealed to be a hallucination of some kind. Sacrifice most likely holds the dismal record for the most egregious usage of suddenly awaken from a nightmare cliche in a single film, when an allegedly terrifying screenplay relies so heavily on transitory visions to fake frights, it's easy to tell that the plot lacks the depth to perform the heavy work as horror. It's nice to see Barbara Crampton, the horror princess of the 1980s, still thriving. Barbara Crampton is a horror icon. Her iconic combination with Jeffrey Combs in one of Stuart Gordon's major works quickly endeared her to genre cinema lovers. Subsequent performances in another significant Lovecraft adaptation, cult favourites like Chopping Mall, and a slew of hilarious full moon films paved the way for her well-deserved icon status. Barbara Crampton featured in several H.P. Lovecraft adaptations in the 1980s and 1990s, including 1985's Reanimator and the following year's From Beyond, both directed by the late master of horror, Stuart Gordon. Now the actress has returned to HP territory with Sacrifice, a film that, while inspired by Paul Kane's short tale Men of the Cloth, has a decidedly Lovecraftian feel. Norway has rich Norse mythology, as well as numerous folk stories. Most individuals have at least a rudimentary understanding of Norse mythology, even if they simply know Thor, Odin, and Loki. However, Norse mythology and folklore are much more than the Norse gods. There are several rural stories about trolls and their shenanigans. Of course, occurrences of the Aurora Borealis sparked rumours for centuries before scientists explained. Norse mythology is an essential aspect of modern culture in the English-speaking world. No one knew anything about it outside of the Nordic region until the 19th century. Surrounded by vast water bodies, various folk characters in Norse mythology originate from the waters, gaining their power. The film does a fantastic job of portraying the regional tradition and mythology with the rural artwork and handicrafts. However, there is a lack of awareness of Norwegian culture, mainly when presenting the style of speech or the human relationship. The projection has the potential to be more accurate. They have just too many Norwegians in the cast to let this go. The way they converse and interact makes the film seem realistic or relevant. The Monster. Tentacle toys and artwork may be found in stores as well as Isaac's childhood bedroom. This may be a crude manner of hinting at its existence. Still, it also acts as a continual reminder of the entity's absolute authority over the island. It's always there, lurking in the shadows. Despite the movie's many allusions to the creature, there is a distinct lack of natural appearance. It, or rather its tentacles, only appear a few times. This is particularly noticeable during Emma's dreams. These are, without a doubt, the most terrifying parts of Sacrifice. Her nightmares become more distressing, with her being the victim of horrifyingly horrific atrocities frequently committed by the entity's tentacles. The rest of the film concentrates on the villagers and the cult itself, rather than the beast. As a result, there are few terrifying scenes outside of Emma's dreams. Why you should watch Sacrifice. Inspired by Paul Kane's short novel Men of the Cloth, Sacrifice follows Isaac and his wife Emma as they face tepid Cthulhu-related shivers. Isaac has no recollection of escaping with his mother from a small Norwegian fishing community 25 years ago, but he's returned to collect his inheritance, so you know family secrets will hamper the couple's journey. Because Emma is pregnant and the village looks to be filled by cultists, you can bet her unborn child will play a role in someone's diabolical scheme, because where else can a simple premise go except somewhere we've gone umpteen times before? Sacrifice, billed as a Lovecraft-style horror film, doesn't accomplish anything as epic as actually showing a monster, or much of anything for that matter. Scenes are mostly made up of talking, some walking, and some more talking. On the sides of a couple frames, smoky fog drifts in. The problem is that you can tell it's from a smoke machine. Violet and other rich colours are used to highlight dreamlike design concepts. It's only that unless Norwegian villagers paint their homes like a scene from Suspiria, such lighting is rarely inspired by a practical plan. The psychological anguish of Emma appears to be the primary emphasis of Sacrifice, rather than the cult and its hold upon Isaac. For all intents and purposes, she is the film's true protagonist. With her horrific nightmares and Isaac's increasingly bizarre behaviour, it's easy to sympathise with her and her desperate need for freedom. The fact that Isaac isn't especially friendly to begin with makes empathising with Emma extremely simple. He comes across as entitled from the start of the film. He arrives in Norway and expects to be accommodated by the natives, although making little effort to adjust himself. As a result, Emma is the only character who is simple to cheer for, and it's difficult to care for what happens to Isaac. The plot is riddled with holes. Sacrifice attempts to distinguish itself from other cult horror films with its Lovecraftian overtones. Still, there isn't enough Lovecraft or creativity for it to truly stand out. Overall, the film does carry you along, but it does so slowly. On the other hand, you will like it if you stay till the finish. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks!